All right, so we're going to be working in Photoshop today, and we're taking a finished project, one that you're done with, one that you're happy with, and we're going to export it into an actual video file that you can submit for your final project. So here we have in Photoshop a finished project, one that we're done with. If you take a look here, I can slide my seek head across and see all the different things I've added to it. I have two video groups on the bottom here. This is actually a video. This is not pictures. So you can actually add video or pictures or a combination of those things to your work you do in Photoshop. It's a very flexible platform for that. I'm going to show you some of the ways you can do those things in a little bit. On the top, I have all of my text here in my second video group. It's all been done. I'm happy with it. I've done all the work for making it the way I want it to be. And I want to finish it as a video. Now I want to make sure I do save this as a PSD file, as an actual Photoshop file first, so I have access to this later. If I want to make changes, if I want to adapt it later for something else, if I just want to save it to export it later for another time, I always want to make sure I have it saved as a PSD file first. Once I've done that, the key button, the most important button, is this one right here. Do you guys see this button right here? Right below where it says audio track. I'm zooming in on it, I'm highlighting it as much as I can. This little arrow button down here. That is the render video button. That is the button that will turn this from a bunch of pictures into a video. So I'm going to show you that right now. The other place is in the menu. There's a menu especially for the video timeline. If you come over here to this little bunch of lines, this is a place that's a menu for the video timeline. Lots of things to do in here. If you have extra time these few days, you've got everything done, you're happy with it, and you want to play around in here, lots of really cool things you can do in here. This is kind of the advanced menu. This is where you can do, you can loop your playback, you can skip over frames, you can add lots of options. I encourage you to mess around in here if you've got the time. Make sure you have a copy saved so you can go back to it if you need to. But also in here you will find the render video option in this settings panel as well. Two places you can go to render video. So I'm going to go to the simplest one, the one you should all be familiar with. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to click on this button here, render video. It brings up my render video panel. Let's walk through top to bottom what each of these options mean so you understand what you're doing when you go through this. At the very top, you have to give it a name. And it's going to give it the name of untitled, probably untitled 1, something like that to start off with. You want to give it a better title than that, so you can actually find the thing. I've given this one here a title that I wanted to use for what I was creating. Then you have to select the folder you want it to go. The default is probably going to be your desktop. It's probably not where you want to put it, so you want to select a folder and actually put it somewhere you want to save it. Make sure you select the folder. You guys should be familiar with that by now. And it actually has the option here for create new subfolder. If you checkbox that, you can actually have Photoshop make a new folder to put this in when it creates the video. If you want to have a special place to tuck this away inside the folder you selected, it'll tuck it away for you while it's making it. I don't typically select that because I'm kind of OCD and I kind of like to have my things in control, so I usually have my folders created already when I do this, and I usually have it all set up the way I want it to be. So I usually don't need this, but if you need it and you want it, the option's there. It's a really nice option. Create the new subfolder. All right, Adobe Media Encoder, leave that alone. There should be no real reason for you to change that. You wouldn't have any reason to change that option. Same here with format. H.264 is your standard video editing format. If you know anything about web video, this is your standard, and you're not going to want to change that right now. Preset medium quality. Lots of things in here. Most of them are relevant to you. The top 3, high quality, medium quality, and low quality, are the 3 that are going to matter the most to you. These affect 2 major things. How long it takes to actually create the video when you click the button to create the video, and how long it'll take to upload. You want to upload it to Schoology to submit your file. If you want to upload it to Gmail to send it to a friend, or if you want to upload it to Google Drive to save it, or whatever you want to do with it, the higher the quality, the bigger the file. The longer it takes to create, the longer it takes to upload. So this is kind of a trade-off here. I typically default to a medium quality video for most of the things. For this specific video I was creating here, it's a meme I'm going to put on my board. I have a cruddy board with a mediocre projector. I could create a high quality video and you wouldn't know anyway. So why am I going to waste my time creating a high quality video, right? So understand what you're creating and why you're creating it, and make sure you select a quality that matters. So really those top three are the primary ones. Everything else in here is specific quality settings for specific things you'd be making it for. You can see here Android phones, iPhones, Apple TV, HD 720. These are different types of high definition quality formats. If you know what you're talking about, then this is a place you might want to go for that. HD 1080i, HD 1080p, NTSC is our TV standard format that we use here in the United States. This is going to be a low quality TV standard. PAL, DV, widescreen, and DV. These are the video formats that are used overseas. Vimeo, YouTube standards. So you can pick one of these if you know what you're doing. Otherwise, stick to these. Medium quality. Understand that these change the things below. So if I switch over to, for example, my HD 1080p, notice it changes my document size. Do you see that? So I might want to go with preset medium quality, but I might know that I want my video to be full size on your typical 1080p HD video screen. The one that you've got in your living room probably is an HD video TV screen. Or the monitor you've got for your computer is probably a typical 1080p HD video screen. That's your standard size. If you know that that's the size you want to make it, you might want to make some changes down below here, because you can see as I change this, it changes some of these things. So I can change my document size then as well, separate from my quality preset. So let's go ahead and take a look at document size. Again, options in here. This only changes the size of the video, not the quality of it. So I'm going to change it back to HDV 1080p, and it still doesn't make it the size I want. I know what size I want it to be. I want 1920 by 1080 because I know, because I've done it before, what size I want my video to be. If you don't know, and it doesn't really matter, hint, hint, it doesn't really matter for this project. Don't waste a lot of time agonizing over this setting. Doesn't really matter, then don't waste a lot of time with this. Frame rate, document frame rate, 30 FPS is perfectly fine. A quick behind the scenes with FPS. FPS stands for frames per second. Any gamers in here? Anybody play video games? Okay. You should be intimately familiar with FPS. Are you? Okay. What's your goal for FPS? What do you want to shoot for? Anybody know? Your video games, what are you looking for? 120 is great, but 60 is your goal. So most monitors, most TVs have what's called a refresh rate at 60 frames per second. That means that they're capable of displaying 60 frames every second. That means that if you output more than that, you're kind of overkill. You're doing more than what they're capable of showing. If you do less than 60 frames per second, that's when you start to see what we call as humans lag, stuttering, jankiness, the bad stuff that we don't want to see, right? And in video games, that's bad news. And in videos, the kind of thing that you're making, that can be bad news too. However, TVs and video, movies, that kind of stuff, typically have a standard refresh rate of 30 frames per second because that's as fast as the human eye can typically see. The only reason you see lag on those video games is because of the way that those monitors function. Okay, so document frame rate, 30 FPS is your standard. You'll typically want to leave it there. If you double that, just so you know, if I put that to 60, that's going to make your video go twice as fast. Okay, now you're showing 60 frames every second. You've made a certain set number of frames in your video. You've created that number of frames. If you show twice as many of those frames every second, you have half as many seconds now of video. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. So understand if you're messing with that, understand what you're messing with. Not a big deal, but I'm going to leave it at my default because I know from doing it before, it works just fine. Field order, aspect, not messing with these things. Color manage, I'll leave that alone. Over here under range, this is what of my video do I want to render? Typically, the answer is going to be all of it. So, all frames. However, if you've made a bunch of stuff and you only want to create a video of some of it, you can define some of what you wanted to create. So, I've got 30 frames per second. I can see I've got 433 frames. I can divide that out to see how many seconds I've got. And I want to show the first 2 seconds of video and only make that as a render. Then I can do that math and I can decide I only want the first, say, 150 frames. And it's only going to make that much of the video. You have a little bit of power here by what you're creating. Typically, you don't care. You leave it at all frames. Render options, you're not going to touch any of these. All right, so we've been top to bottom on this panel. What things you want to change, what things you're typically not going to want to change. Next thing I want to do is I want to hit render. And when I hit this, it's going to take a few seconds to render. The longer the video, the higher the quality, and the more complexity, the longer it will take. And it's going to eventually create a file called Boromir Directions in my desktop. See how it goes. You're going to get this little exporting video window. The little green bar is going to go across. And as I said, it'll take longer depending on how complex your video is and how high your settings were. Because I use an actual video as a component of what I made, it's going to take me probably a little longer than it would take you. Yours is a series of pictures, which is a little bit less complex to render. So yours shouldn't be quite as difficult and it won't take quite as much time to export as mine will. So let's go ahead and wait for this to come across here. It's going to speed up, and then we should be all done. So that is exporting your video for your final project. If this progress bar shows up, it completes, goes away, and you get your file, you've done everything you need to do. You're going to have a nice completed file. You don't get any error messages. We got no error messages. You're ready to go. You're done your project, and you can submit it.